But we're here to talk about the icon of Maryville College. It's 142 years old, Anderson Hall. The front part of it's well preserved, isn't it, Dr. Klingsmith?
It seems like it's about 300 years.
Yeah, that's very true. The front part of the building, on the other side, the rectangular three-story front part of the building, was constructed in 1869-1870 school year. And classes began on September the 13th, 1870. And a few days after the beginning of classes, the students and the faculty picked up their meager supplies and walked from downtown Maryville to this hill covered in cedar trees and had the first chapel service on the second floor of Anderson Hall. Isn't that amazing? Everything was in Anderson except eating and sleeping. Student activities, all administrative functions, student literary societies had a room there. Classes were somewhat familiar, that you expect the Greek and the Latin and the sacred literature and the theology, but also English, writing. Whoops. It's a nice windy day, but I'm glad we're outside. Social sciences, natural sciences. The natural sciences, for example, were on the first floor of Anderson in the front of the building. Can you picture labs down there? And students went to chapel every day. And as I said, it was on the second floor, kind of on the east wing. You know where the history offices are. If you walked out of the history offices and took two of Dr. Klingsmith's giant steps, you would be standing in the middle of the chapel. So they went to chapel every day. Now then, the building, let me say this, there were about 100 students at that time. Only about 17 of them, though, were in the college curriculum. There were others that were in the English curriculum, and these were students that were preparing to teach. They didn't need a degree, but they needed to study certain courses in order to go out and teach in the public schools. And there was a prep school, preparatory school, a high school, if you will. But about 17 of the 100, when they opened in the fall of 1870, were in taking the college classical curriculum. Now then, in 1892, the back of the building, called the Fairweather Annex, was added on, and it housed the prep school. Dr. Barnes was the principal, and if you've been over to the psych table over there, you've heard a lot about Dr. Barnes. Dr. Barnes was the principal, but the college remained in the front of the building. Now think about Anderson Hall, 142 years. Thousands of students have walked through that building. In fact, I imagine it's difficult to graduate from Maryville College without taking a class in Anderson Hall. So everybody that attended or graduated from the college has an Anderson Hall story. And a lot of those stories center around the college or the Anderson Tower bell. Or perhaps I should say bells. The bell currently in the tower that you heard ring at noon today, anybody want to take a guess at how old it is? Okay.
This is just a wide guess, but somewhere between 50 and 100 years old.
It's 128 years old. And it's been serving public education, not public education. It's been serving educational institutions for 124 years. But that is the second bell. And our story must begin with the first bell. And you're looking at the first bell right here. This bell was cast in 1856 at the Meneely Bell Works in West Troy, New York. In 1858, Maryville College obtained the bell. Now I say obtained because we haven't been able to determine if the college leaders, the board of directors and the president and so forth, actually purchased the bell or if some benefactor purchased it and gave it to the college. If I was taking a guess, I would say it would be the latter. Maryville College didn't have much money in 1858. We also don't know how the bell got to East Tennessee. Did it come down over the valleys and mountains of Virginia and Kentucky? Or was it put on a boat and it came down to one of the ports along one of the Carolina coasts and then over the mountain by wagon? We don't know the answer to that. I'd love to find out. But the point being, Maryville College got a bell in 1858. Now then, are you thinking about that date? 1858? Anderson Hall, 1870? The college was still at the old campus downtown on what was then Main Street, now Broadway. Do most of you know where the Citizens Bank is, the CBBC Bank? And there's a large parking lot just west of that bank. The college was right there in the eastern portion of that parking lot, in that general vicinity, on the corner of College Street and Main Street, or Broadway. In 1858, there were 3 buildings. The Frame College, an old frame building, 3-story frame building, which served as a dormitory and as classrooms. It was constructed in the 1830s and was a small 2-story brick building which housed the library. And then under construction was the 3-story brick college. It was going to be a 3-story rectangular building. Does that sound familiar? Sounds like we were talking about a 3-story rectangular brick building just a moment ago. The tower wasn't finished, so they could not hang the bell in the tower when they got it. And instead, they rang the bell by hitting it with a hammer. And if you will look closely along the base of the bell, you can see where the hammer hit the bell. Everybody take a look at it when this is over. The bell served the college until April the 22nd, 1861, when the college closed for the Civil War, just a few days after Fort Sumter was fired upon. The students and the faculty scattered, some going north, some going south, but one man stayed with the college, Dr. Thomas Jefferson Lamar. He was an alumnus of the college and an antebellum professor of Greek and sacred literature. And when the war was over, on faith, Dr. Lamar reopened the college September the 5th, 1866. 13 students. He worked hard not only teaching, but looking for additional faculty members, for a president, for land to build a new college. And Anderson Hall was started in 1869. And the college moved here, as I said, in 1870. Now then, the question that I asked when I first read this, what did they do with the bell during the Civil War? Because both armies occupied the old campus, and either army would have melted it down for bullets. We found not too long ago that they carried the bell to the courthouse, which was on the corner of Main Street and Cusick, where the First Tennessee Bank is today, and hid the bell, I'm sure, in the basement of that old building. And when Anderson Hall was completed and the tower was there, they picked up the bell and brought it to Maryville College and put it in the tower. Student handbooks, 1892, 1896. But that's fairly close to 1870. So I looked at the bell schedule. I thought you might be interested, and I'm so glad that we have students here today and some of my favorite faculty members who don't like 8 o'clock classes.
How did you know?
The rising bell rang at 5:30. Breakfast was at 6:30. And the first recitation class, 7 a.m. Doesn't that make 8 o'clock classes seem like nothing? Yeah. Then chapel was about 8:45, and then the bell called them to other classes and recitations throughout the morning, to dinner at the noon hour, to recitation in the afternoon, to supper, and then to study time, and finally lights out. So this bell was ringing constantly throughout the day. I put out another bell schedule on the table over there. It's in the 1920s, I think. You all need to look at that too. So it's very interesting how the time of day has shifted just a bit. Just a bit. 5:30 though, that's too much. So the bell calls students to class, and the times changed, of course, until 1937, when the bell developed a crack. And if you get close enough, you can see the crack near the top of the bell. And we do know that the college didn't get the second bell until a year later, in the spring of 1938. And I wondered what they did during that 1 year. And a few months ago, I met Frank McClelland, who was the son of Dr. Frank McClelland, who was Dean of Students at the college and then Dean of the college from the 1930s till 1967. And Frank was a little boy here in the 1930s, and he said that he could remember the college engineer, the Andy McCall of the day, climbing the tower every morning and turning the bell just a bit so that it would strike another point on the bell each day. And my guess, it had kind of a flat tone if it had a crack in it. But Brownie, college engineer Chalmers Brownie would turn the bell just a little bit each day to keep the bell ringing during that year. And then a second bell was gotten in 1938, and this bell was put in storage in the maintenance area until we discovered that it was there this last fall, and our wonderful maintenance staff got the bell out and cleaned it up and mounted it, and what a wonderful gift we have here. Eventually, I understand it will go in Anderson Hall after the renovation. But what's the story of the bell in the tower?